Edward Holton James, 1873–1954, was an American socialist. He was the nephew of philosopher William James and novelist Henry James. Biography: James was born in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, to Robertson James and Mary Lucinda Holton. He was the nephew of philosopher William James and novelist Henry James. He attended Harvard and graduated in 1896. On December 27, 1899, he married Mary Louisa Cushing, daughter of the famed Cushing family of Boston. They gave birth to 3 girls: Olivia, Mary, and Louisa. From 1900 to 1906 he practiced law in Seattle, Washington. Soon after, James moved to France and for the next 6 years was the owner and editor of the Liberator of Paris with E. F. Milius. In 1915, at the outbreak of World War I, James met with various socialists in Berlin. The German authorities took him to the border of Holland and instructed him not to return to Germany, punishable by imprisonment. But, according to his nephew George Vaux, by this time, he had developed another principle, namely that no one could tell him that he could not place his foot anywhere on the Creator's earth that he wished. Hence, early one morning before daylight, disguised as a day laborer and pushing a bicycle, but carrying still the 2 violins, he walked past a drunken sentry on the Belgian frontier and got back to Berlin. He was there for about 2 weeks before he was again discovered by the police and rearrested. Quote, "This last time, he was not treated with the same restraint and was jailed as a political prisoner for the duration of the war." In 1927, James took part in a Sacco and Vanzetti meeting at the Boston Common during the trial. As one reporter expressed, before Governor Fuller granted a respite to Messrs. Sacco and Vanzetti, the streets of Boston contained a number of persons who annoyed the police. Edward Holton James, nephew of the late famed philosopher William James and novelist Henry James, attended a Sacco and Vanzetti mass meeting on the Boston Common. Smartly dressed, neatly barbered, looking more like a distinguished professor emeritus than a boisterous radical nephew, James shouted, "Down with the police," assaulted a bluecoat, was promptly arrested. Quote, in the early 1930s, James wrote 2 books on Mahatma Gandhi, and in March 1931, he traveled to India to confer with Gandhi and attend sessions of the All India National Congress. In the 1940s, influenced by the ideas of American fascist writer Lawrence Dennis, James headed a nationalist group called the Yankee Free Men. In 1943, he wrote I'm a Yankee, a book published by the Yankee Free Men movement. During the 1950s, he and the Duke of Bedford published The Word in Glasgow, edited by Guy A. Aldred. The worldwide exploits of James are many, but one particular incident speaks to the nature of his character. He was a devoted violinist, often practicing 4 hours at a time. Yet his style of playing was unique, as remembered by his nephew Vaux. Having very short fingers, he decided that he would develop a whole new system of music for the violin, and therefore cut down the necks of all his instruments, thereby shortening them materially so his fingers could reach the strings more easily. The music, which he then subsequently played, consisted of very high squeaks, and he would practice 4 hours in his room on these principles, which he developed, quote, as his son-in-law Alexander Calder, too, recalled in his autobiography with pictures. Mr. James used to play violin atrociously but assiduously. Quote, Edward Holton James died in 1954. Archives. The Edward Holton James papers are located at the Harvard Law School Library, Cambridge. Publications. The Trial Before Pilate, 1919. Crossroads in Europe. A Word for Minorities, 1929. Gandhi the Internationalist. 1930. Gandhi a Caesar. 1930. I Tell Everything. The Brown Man's Burden. A Book on India. 1931. Jesus for Jews. A History. 1934. I Am a Yankee. 1943.